Today I shall be talking with you about an awakening that's a lot more recent. Um, it's something I've been working on all my life, and this is like the beginning of the unraveling of a few awakenings I sense. So it revolves around an imbalance that I have experienced in regards to men in this lifetime, and so this particular one, it's basically there's been this belief inside of me that when men behave badly, when men behave in forceful ways, be it violent or anger, losing temper, um, exerting some kind of dominance intellectually over a woman just because they're a woman, because there are some men that do this, um, or just think they're better than women because they're a man. The reaction that's been happening in me is that I've felt like I think I felt like they had power over me, and also I felt like they could actually take my power away. Like, it's almost like, they could just reach in and just take it away. And it drew out, like, very fearful responses in me. When that power that was being expressed in an imbalanced way, let's say through, for me, I never experienced physical violence from a man, but I have experienced emotional violence, mental violence, with men losing tempers around me. That was sort of a very common thing that happened in with the males in my household. But the good thing is like I had this balance to it, that they weren't bad guys or anything. Like, they were just like really loving men, my father, my brothers, but just had this imbalance where, if something, whatever triggered them enough, like bam, like, big tempers, and I'd be like, terrified. So, yeah, so I had this tendency when I was younger to just run and hide, like just run from it all, like escape. That was my trauma response to it. And as I got older, like, I think we've got to go through a bit of a time where, we might still be turning to trauma responses, but we have to sort of face it and everything. So, my trauma response was more to fight it, to, just go straight into it and try and fight it and everything. And that's even been happening recently. And I think what I noticed, I had a massive reaction to when Renee Good was murdered, and it's only the beginning of 2026 when this happened. And I'm can't stand everything, all the horror that's happening across the world. Yeah, I don't really even want to think about it because it's just not going to serve any good. But I care about everything, that's happening. But this particular incident, because it was perpetrated by, the male, and it was coming from a hatred of women, clearly, there's no doubt about it. There was just hatred, and there was nothing to hate there, you know what I mean? This woman, Renee Good, like, you looked at her face and she was just the most harmless, innocent being on earth. Like, there was it just all seems so inconceivable. Like, wow, how could you hate somebody and, think they're a fucking bitch and want to shoot their brains out? Like, that's incredible threat, isn't it? That this man is feeling, to do such a thing, that he gets so overwhelmed that he believes he can take a life away. But anyway, it affected me massively because of this this particular topic and illusion that I've been holding. So I realize, because I had a very, very, one day that emotional reaction to this just hit like, this absolute peak point where, it really sort of got me quite sick, physically sick. And so after, recovering from the physical sickness, I just realized, okay, I don't really want to get, in such a desperate situation where, I could end up having a stroke or something, because that's like how serious it was. Um, I've got to work on this. I got to get to work on this. So the awakening pretty much is like, this is just layer one of healing what I know has been it's been a very strong lesson for this lifetime, resolving a whole bunch of fears surrounding men. I mean, who knows? Who knows if I'm going to get more, but this awakening is simply that I genuinely believe that a man, when they do this sort of thing, whether they murder you or whatever, like, they can actually take away your power. And they can't. I mean, how can they? They can only take it if it's given, or if it's allowed or whatever. Like, if there's like no one can take our power from us. Like, it's impossible, really. Like, the power is just a part of the self. There's probably a bit more to this. Or maybe I could express it a different way. Power is just like, it's a quality of the self that everybody has power as a part of their energy body. I do, you do, we all have power. And it's when we go into this space of lack, when we believe it's not, we don't have that power, that someone else has taken it from us. And if you look out in the physical world at all the imbalances being played out, it can look like there is, it really does, it sees this incredible, that's how the world looks, doesn't it? Like, there's just all of this power plays, Game of Thrones sort of stuff, and it looks like power is controlled by a very small number, and in a physical sense it is, but obviously in our minds that's where it's happening as well. In our minds we're actually believing that that's just the way it is, that Donald Trump and all of these particular world leaders, the most imbalanced ones, that they have all the power, all the millionaires, billionaires and trillionaires and all that sort of stuff. But that's why it looks that way, because we actually believe it. So, and if we just I'm breaking it back down. I've got it, for me, I work best when I just look at it from this very, close in sort of level, to see like, what's that pattern in me? And the pattern is that it's this surrender of power, this belief that the power is being taken away from me and somebody else is holding it. But it's actually just not true at all. It's just about me just recognizing, the power is a part of me. The power is my divine right, the power cannot be taken away, like absolutely nothing. They can kill me, they can do whatever they want with me, take all my money, but you can't take my power. It's impossible. Only I can surrender that. And so I'm going to break the pattern of allowing myself to keep surrendering it any longer. And I'm not sure exactly how that's going to look, but it's definitely going to, I'm just going to sort of be very aware when there is a power play happening, to make that choice to not engage, to not surrender my power, or to not misuse my own power either, whatever it may be. Yeah. So, yeah, and I'll sort of bring it back to where I started, because for me, this very much revolves around men and women and the imbalance that has been created through the perceived division of men and women on this planet. You know, it's much more than, you know, a physical body difference. There is, you know, it's been played on all levels of our minds, this separation. So that's that's the awakening for today, that, you know, even though it seems that women have less power than men, it's only in the mind, you know, it's only through the surrender of power, and we can step into that sense of power, knowingness of power. It cannot be taken away by anyone, no matter what they do.